Welcome to Dental Unscripted. Where Mike Dinsio and Paula Quinn break down the practice ownership journey, one episode at a time. Starting up, buying, and running a successful dental practice. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dental Unscripted. As you guys know, I'm Michael Dinsio, one of the owners of Next Level, and we are missing my co-host Paula Quinn. She couldn't make it today, but I feel like she would totally be bored in this conversation, so she's probably happy she's not here. But she did go through a couple transitions herself, so she understands this stuff. But I think today's topic is going to be really interesting because it's all about value, and we have the perfect guest to talk about this valuation. And when you are approaching buying a practice, it's like I get a lot of questions as a buyer rep of like, what's an appropriate value and what's your methodology, and is this overpriced and blah 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 blah. And so I think this is a really good episode. Today, I have someone helping me with the conversation. Her name's Marie Chatterley. You all might know her. She is the owner of CTC Associates. What you might not know about CTC Associates is they've been around since 1988. That's a really long time. I had the pleasure of working with her dad, Larry. Just a fantastic firm. They cover, so it's a practice brokerage firm and other things they've done over the years, but they cover the areas of Colorado, Utah, Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Washington. I missed New Mexico and Alaska. So essentially like that Rocky Mountain region all the way up to Alaska. I had to remind her that she's got some clients in Alaska even, which is super cool. So welcome to the show, Marie. Nice to have you on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so you and I go back. I
Maybe 15
can't believe it, but yeah, it's been a while. Like we did some stuff together when I was at B of A, when I lived in Colorado, and CTC was a force to be reckoned with in Colorado. And the reason why I felt like you guys are perfect for this topic is because I actually really love your valuations almost every time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about CTC. I know I kind of set it up a little bit, but anything else that you would add about the company and how you guys help your clients and all that good stuff?
Yeah, just my dad started brokering dental practices in 1988. I joined him in the industry about 20 years ago. And we primarily represent sellers in our markets, but we occasionally do some assistance with buyers. But even though we represent the sellers, we certainly answer a ton of questions about valuations with the buyers that are looking at our prospective opportunities.
Totally. Yeah, no, I mean, it's a big decision for those. Well, every doctor buying a practice, a big decision, but for like those first time buyers, man, there's a lot of questions around that. And the poor sellers too. Let's not forget them. Your clients, they've worked their entire life sometimes building this phenomenal business. Sometimes they start and build it from the ground up. They didn't even buy it themselves, and then it's time for them to walk away. And it's like they put their blood, sweat, and tears, and they probably think it's worth $1 bajillion sometimes. And so it's like bridging that dare I say, scared, kind of more nervous buyer. And then you've got this seller that, has expectations. So hence the topic today, valuation, right? So walk me through a little bit. Like, I don't think I've ever had this question asked to practice brokers on the program. Like, walk me through that listing process, because most of my clients are like, as you know, buyers, and a lot of work goes into getting a practice prepared for sale. And I think the audience needs to hear that, because sometimes, and some brokers do just slop it together for sure. You guys don't. But like a lot of work goes into preparing that seller and like how you get to that value and the whole thing. Can you just walk us through that protocol, that process that you've been doing since 1988 with your clients? Can you just walk us through that? Yeah.
Sure thing. I mean, typically people reach out to us anywhere between 1 and 7 years before they're ready to transition in practice. So there are a lot of things that can be done in advance to prepare to have your practice just looking and appearing not just on the financials, but also from other elements of the practice to be prepared and at the highest end of a practice value range per se. So it's little things like not just cleaning up the financials, removing discretionary expenses, but it's also setting up your software so you're tracking collections by insurance provider. Little things that buyers are going to say, gosh, that tends to influence my perception of value. So when you look at a practice, it's not just value that's on the net income. That's where we really focus a ton, total collections and net income. But when you're looking at it from the standpoint of something being sellable and something being deemed of high value to another person, there's so many things that encompass that value that are not on the tax returns, that are not on your profit and loss statement, and that you can make changes within your practice within a short window of time, 1 to 2 years if needed, so that it looks so different to a buyer coming to look at the opportunity. And then when I'm appraising a practice, it helps me out as well, because when certain things are organized really well for at least a year or more, if possible, then it allows me to showcase all of these amazing things that I would say add value to a prospective buyer that maybe you're not thinking of when you're just considering listing a practice. Most people just send me their financial statements so I can give them kind of an estimate of value, which I don't charge for that, but it's just kind of a snapshot of what's kind of the approximate range. But I have to say with a caveat, there's a ton of other things that could influence that perception at the higher end or a higher or lower value of that range.
So that's perfect, because ex-banker talking, I go to the financials, like if I'm buying a business, I want to know within reason what the ranges would be of how much money I'm going to make or could make. Right. And that's where my eyes go to. But I think today's buyers, they look at a lot of other stuff. What are some of those more common things? I mean, you get calls from buyers literally every single day. What are some of those things that you feel like are really important for a buyer when they're looking at that you're hearing, not so much your perspective, but what you hear every single day is important to a buyer? Like, what do you tell your clients? Hey, like when your client, I'll say it in a different way. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll tell you what I hear, but then I'll tell you what I wish buyers would be asking for. I'll give you both. Okay, the first thing that I hear the most common is, what are the collections? What's the number of operatories? And how many new patients are coming into the practice? Those are the 3 most common questions I receive. Most people want over 5 operatories. Most people want this gigantic number of new patients coming in. And most people want to know exactly what the practice is collecting. I'll just tell you really quickly why all 3 of those can be problematic.
They don't ask how much they're making. They just ask how much.
No, those are the 3 most common questions. Okay. So the first one, collections, I would argue that can be problematic, because you can have 2 practices collecting $1 million. One doctor's taking home $200,000, the other doctor is taking home $400,000. Those are hugely different in the opportunity. The second one is the operatories. This one is interesting to me, because if I have a fee-for-service practice in a middle to high income area where a doctor is, collecting, let's say 1.8 million. Let's say this office is cranking. And I had one of these just a year ago. Guess how many operatories they had?
4.
3.
Oh, 3.
No, 3.
Wow.
So I think our perception of how many operatories we need needs to go back to what type of business plan you're planning on implementing. Are you going to have a Medicaid office, a PPO practice, fee-for-service practice? And then let's narrow down what makes sense for operatories based on the type of business model that you're hoping to.
I love this because there are some podcasts and some other consultants out there, I won't name names, that talk about what you just said, like don't buy anything less than 5 ops, blah, 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 bigger the better. And I feel like everybody's just chasing this like really big DSO sale, and that almost never happens.
Well, and also, do you really want that? So like, I'll go into what I think I wish buyers would ask me more, because I think that's relevant, because usually I also get asked about like the number of new patients, which I just want to say as a side note, If a practice that's been around for 30 years is getting 50 new patients a month, that is a red flag, not a green flag.
Wait, say that again. If
a practice that's been around for 30 years is getting 50 new patients per month, that is a red flag, not a green flag. Why do I need that many new patients per month for a practice that's existing with one provider? One doctor can only see so many patients. So that tells me you have a lot of attrition and a lot of people leaving. Unless you have substantial growth to go along with those new patients, the average practice needs 5 to 10 new patients to just replenish average attrition. That is it. They don't need to have 20, 30, 40 new patients per month. So I get asked that question a lot, but I think I'm being asked that question without the context of why we need new patients. If it's a startup practice and it's been around for 3 years, yes, 100%, let's buy the one that is seeing 50 new patients per month. They've been around 20, 30 years. That to me is a scary figure if it's that high. But what I wish buyers would ask me is more about the production by procedure code. There is so much to be said for what you're producing as an associate, and if you can duplicate the production of the practice that you're acquiring, or if you can add production to this practice. Now, in all fairness, probably 50% of my buyers feel that that's important to consider in an opportunity, but I wish it was the first thing that we're talking about is how does my production makeup compare to whatever doctor that I'm looking at to acquire their practice? And then the second one is the income after debt service, after I've considered what the buyer needs to put into the practice. So not just income after debt service for the practice itself, like based on whatever the asking price is, but income after debt service also after maybe it needs $80,000 of new equipment. Maybe it needs a whole revamping of all the computer systems. Maybe you want to go to a different software system. So taking into account what you need to do to make the practice functional and awesome for you, and looking at that with a lender to determine, okay, what's my take home going to be with this loan amount if I purchase the practice and the additional items that I need.
I love that. I think that's so on point. I coach our clients when approaching practices with all of those questions. I don't care about collections. You said it perfectly. I care about profit. New patients matters to me, but you make a really, really valid point that a lot of patients is potentially a problem. But I ask my clients to literally digest and stare at the provider report code, the code's production by code, and seeing how often, how many procedures they're doing of each procedure, and making sure not only can they replicate the work, but what they could also keep in-house versus refer out. So I love that. I think it's spot on. I'm curious, taking a step back, going back to that listing process. We kind of went down that buyer path, and I love that. But I do want to focus on value, as this is the topic today. And that is, when you get a seller to sign on with you, what's that process feel like? You obviously request a bunch of documents, and then your team goes and values it, or maybe you do. Can you walk us through that process? Because a lot of work does go into that analysis. And sometimes I feel like buyers don't give the broker the kudos they deserve in all of that work that you do put into it. Does that make sense? Does that question resonate?
Yeah. So, I mean, the initial process starts with, we have a questionnaire, and depending on the specialty, the questionnaire is different for the information that we're collecting. And it's a lot of information about the practice, the history of the practice, what's going on with the systems, the financial systems, the patient flow, active patient count, insurance participation. We look at a lot of practice reports from the software, and sometimes we don't get all the practice reports that we need to kind of gauge certain elements within the practice. But we do the best we can to collect as much information about the practice as possible.
Yep.
We do an equipment inventory and do demographic research on the area. We look at the real estate, the lease, if it's assignable, if the building's for sale, what the comps are. So we're kind of looking at the full business opportunity as a whole, and it is a lot of information that we're gathering from our prospective clients, in addition to all of the financials from a CPA. And so I am the one that does the appraisals. So my team helps me collect all the information, and we do to put it into a formal report. But there are three different appraisal methodologies that we use that are standard. So there's an income, asset, and value income, asset, and market valuations. And, depending on the timeline of the person considering selling, sometimes we'll just give an appraisal to have like a snapshot of what it looks like today and then reappraise it when they're getting ready to retire, or after we've been able to give them some advice on changes to potentially make either with systems or protocols or within the financials.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a lot of information that we go through to kind of determine what this practice value is. I would say the financial analysis is what takes me the most time. Going through every single line item of expenses, determining if those expense categories are within industry standard, or if I see a problem somewhere, if I see that somebody's rolling a ton of personal expenses in and I'm having a hard time, being able to effectively adjust that out in a way that would make sense for a lender.
I was just going to say, when a buyer, because like ex-banker, talking here, like the brokers, in my opinion, their job is to really flush out those what we're calling add backs or adjustments, right? So it's really easy to see the net profit. It's really easy to see the owner's salary. Those are two simple numbers. Hopefully that's the majority of the profit. But then there's like all these other things that I get a lot of questions about. I know you do as well. The broker really is the quarterback on trying to flush out anything else. And can you like describe some of those maybe in more detail, like, and how you go about like trying to find those and validate those? Because I gotta be honest with you, even if it's pretty creative accounting, I love like a brokerage like you guys, like I'm going to hold what you've kind of investigated and figured out at a high level, meaning you guys are claiming that there's X amount of dollars running through the practice, that maybe they're buying their toilet paper through Amazon for their house, right? Like, but you are trying to go through that with your client on the front end. I'm not going to get an opportunity to interview your client. So walk us through that process, like that.
Yeah. So I'll clarify, because a broker cannot claim anything.
It was a connection issue, or maybe not. But what we are talking about, and I'll just keep kind of wrapping here while Marie maybe gets reconnected. But essentially, clients, sellers have stuff on their financials that need to be just flushed out. And owning a practice, I own a practice or a business. I run things through the business. It's not shady at all. It's actually quite normal. Medical insurance. I run my car. You can run your spouse's income if they have a job, quote unquote. There's all kinds of things that you can run through the practice. That's totally legit and above board. But those are benefits to the buyer. Benefits. Like, for example, when you take over the practice, there's Marie's back.
Sorry, I don't know what happened.
You're fine.
Sorry.
I carried it. What I was discussing with the audience, that it's not shady to run things through, that I'm, as a business owner, I run things through, but it's flushing out those expenses to make sure that they are legit. And you as the buyer may not choose to run your car or run your spouse's income through. So what the question was for Marie was, how do you guys go about finding those and validating those?
Yeah, so I was just going to say that no broker should ever say that they're claiming any of these types of adjustments. So these adjustments come from a bookkeeper, CPA, or the client, or a combination of all of them, and from financial records. So if you can't show that to me, I'm not going to adjust it for you. So I realize some people might make a blanket adjustment for something. I'm not going to do that. So you give me your financials, and if you rolled $200,000 of Costco through your supplies, unless you can give me the full statement of those that I can then provide to a buyer or the bank, then I can't make that adjustment. So I'll do all of the big ones that are easy. Like if you already categorize something separately for auto, meals and entertainment, travel, those types of things are really easy for us to pull out. Like you just mentioned, doctor's comp, spouse wages, whatever it may be, But if you have a category where you're rolling something like I just described, you could just start doing this today by saying, okay, supplies, dental supplies other, and everything that's on the supplies other is Costco and Amazon, let's say.
Clean
And
it up.
maybe those are personal, but then you can show us like those
Mm-hmm.
expense reports so that the bank can say, oh yeah, that's all Costco and Amazon, so let's not stress about that. But yeah, you can't just pretend that you're going to get some big adjustments on your financials to industry standards just because I know that your supplies are inflated by 2 times.
Okay, so to dummy this down, because Marie and I are like on the same page, not calling the audience dumb by all means, but why this matters is because valuation is heavily dependent on how much the business profits. Marie talked about that. Like buyers are calling you, Marie, asking how much the collections are when they should be asking what the profit is. Well, the profit could be lower than it actually is if we, or the professionals, Marie in this case, doesn't find out with the bookkeeper's help and the accountant's help to find what those things are. So you as the owner tomorrow taking over the practice wouldn't have those expenses. Though you can choose to run Costco through your business, sure, but that's a benefit to you. So really figuring out, and that's why you need a good professional team on your team, is to really know exactly what that profit is. Okay, so Marie, do you agree with that statement that value is heavily dependent on profit, or no? And it's okay if you don't
I
agree.
do, because I feel like there are other things, like I mentioned earlier, that influence value, such as equipment, systems, staff, like all insurance participation. But the profit is what is the largest contributing factor. So the profit is what I use to kind of gauge this reasonable range in which a practice might sell for.
Yeah.
But all of the other factors help influence whether it's going to be at the higher, low end of that range or in the middle.
Love it. Okay, so this rule of thumb, let's debunk it right now. A percentage of top line. Everybody talks about it. I'm sure your clients come to you and say, well, I was at a study club yesterday and everybody told me I could sell it for 95% of collections because that's what everybody's doing, quote unquote, or I'm on a dental forum and they set a percentage of whatever. How do you handle that? Because I hate that comment. I'm sure you do too. How do you handle that with your clients? Because it's really not the full picture.
Yeah, I think it's easy also to share that there's a reason why there is a difference in that percentage of gross collections. So if I'm looking at the total income in a practice, it's like I just explained earlier. If 2 practices are collecting $1 million, one doctor takes 200,000, one doctor takes home 400,000, those should obviously not appraise for the same price. So that's my first example. But the second one is, what is the business opportunity? Because if you're saying, oh, I hear so-and-so down the street sold for 100% of gross collections to a DSO, and I'm saying, yeah, that might be the case, but they probably got 60% of that cash at close. 40% is withheld for bonuses or potential equity. So you have to compare apples to apples. And the problem in dentistry right now is we don't have apple and apple opportunities. We have independent transactions and we have corporate transactions. Those are 2 very different things. Interestingly enough, most of the time it's a very similar dollar amount of cash that is at close for both of those opportunities. It's just one requires you to work back for 3 to 5 years to get bonuses and whatnot, and the other one you can just exit and leave.
That's interesting. I love that you bring this up because you work in a market where there's a lot of DSO activity. There's DSO activity in all the states that you cover, but I feel, I don't know if this is true, I feel like Colorado is a little heavier than most. Is that true in the markets that you work in? Or no?
It certainly is. I think the regulations with expanded duty dental assisting in Colorado allows a DSO to thrive a little bit more here. You have an assistant in the chair doing work and not the higher paid dentist. So it just allows for more profitability, but we've seen it cool down in the last 5 years.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I want to say that again, because I picked up on it. I want to say it again. It's interesting when a buyer is competing with a DSO. So Marie, you're listing a practice. Let's do this scenario, play it out. I'm a buyer. You have a listing and a DSO is interested in it. And so you're looking at 2 buyers, one that's corporate, DSO, one that's a private practice. I feel like sometimes buyers, they're naturally going to feel like they don't have a chance. And there's definitely some upside to a DSO. I'd love for you to tell us what that could or couldn't be. But there's also some really good things about the owner too. And you just made the comment that the cash at closing, ironically, is very similar to what maybe a bank could fund a private practice owner versus a DSO. Something that I learned, sorry, I'm bouncing around a little bit, that the DSOs also are dealing with banks too. They make it sound like they have all kinds of cash. They're dealing with banks too. So can you, like, as a broker, I didn't think I was going to go here, but it came up. I think it's a great question. As a broker, a buyer comes to you, a DSO comes to you, they're both interested. How do you navigate that? I mean, of course, it's the seller, your client's decision, but how does that usually play out, and what are the things that go into that?
So I think that there's very little, I feel bad for buyers when they feel like they're competing against DSOs. There's very little competition with DSOs. The reason being is what an independent buyer is willing to offer is a pretty high cash at close amount with very few strings attached. They just exit and go. So if that was the goal of the seller in the first place, then there's no competition for that buyer with a DSO. They weren't planning on doing that anyway.
Yeah.
If a client has this perception that they're going to have some big payout by going with a DSO, there's no price that a buyer could pay to match that regardless, because that perception of what may be coming in the future, that feeling of, I'm going to get this big perk down the road, there's not really a lot a buyer could do about that. So that's why I feel like they're really not in competition with each other. Yeah. When I have both of those offers come in and I'm talking with a seller, at the end of the day, it's not usually about the dollar amounts of that cash at close. It's usually about the full picture of what this offer is. And a DSO does not come without strings. So there are work packs, there are, production bonuses that are based on what you're producing, the office is producing, whatever it may be. And you have to decide if you want that or not. The perk of whatever's coming in the future is just like any other investment. There's risk associated with it. I think we're kind of having a cool down window here in Colorado without sharing too much information that might not be awesome. But I mean, I don't want to be disparaging to anyone considering a DSO. However, we've got too many practices that have closed that are corporate owned. I don't know what a large number of those sellers ended up doing if they lost their equity and bonuses. I know some have. We definitely have had a number of clients that have purchased their practices back from DSOs because of poor performance on behalf of the DSO. So I think that a lot of sellers are listening to their colleagues, like the good and the bad. And when you're on just a general forum, please keep in mind, this is somebody that just needs to boast to the world that they got 100% of gross collections. They're not telling you
100%
all of the other stuff that came with that. They're not saying, I only got 50% cash at close though.
I always say that when you're in a room and you're hanging out, you're at a baseball game and your buddy tells you that he scored 3x on an investment on his Robinhood app on his phone, he'll tell you that story, but he won't tell you the 5 that he lost his ass on. So it's the same scenario. It's like all the chatter, all the things is like, oh, I sold a DSO and I got all this. They're bragging. It's not the true story. There's a lot more to it. I think it was super well said there, Marie, that when you sell to a DSO, there's a lot of strings attached where if you as the buyer come fully prepared to buy, you're pre-approved from solid banks that Marie or I totally endorse. You've got some cash in case you had to go a little bit over what the banks could give. Your clinical skills are dialed. You write a CV, you do some research. Maybe you went to the same school. All these things play into a seller's, oh, I like this person, I would like to pass, right? I mean, you're the one having those conversations. That matters, right, Marie?
I think so, but I mean, 95% of my sellers just are interested in selling to an independent buyer.
Wow.
So I think that's a majority.
95%?
Yes, that's a majority of the market.
See, I love that. And guys, Marie moves a lot of dental practices. I hear that, and it's my favorite thing to hear. All the big brokers nationwide will say something like that statement right there. And it makes me feel good that private practice dentistry is still very strong. Of course, you'll sell to a DSO from time to time, but the vast majority are selling a private practice. That's great to hear. That's really great to hear.
Well, because when you're talking about practice.
No, we lost her again. We were going to say something really good. I could tell. Whatever you did, Marie, to leave and come back, because I want to hear what she has to say. The bottom line, though, is, folks, with value, and let's take it back to value. You can compete against the DSOs as far as a purchase price. You absolutely can. Go ahead, Marie. What she's back. What were you going to say there?
Sorry.
You're fine.
I was just going to say, back to practice value. I think it's important to realize that a DSO looks at a practice the same way you do as a buyer. They're looking at all of the same components of the practice and opportunity, what will make it successful under their organization, just like you'd be looking at. So it's not like there's some big difference in the perception of value between these two buyers.
Mhm.
And in all fairness, the DSO is going to pay the lowest price that they think you're going to take for it. They're not here to make everybody millionaires. They're here to make profit and money. And if they're not going to make money off of you, it's not a desirable transaction. So that's why I don't feel like there's a huge comparison for an independent versus a DSO. I think you have great opportunities. I think for the most part, you're not going to have to pay over what a lender can provide for you to acquire practice in most markets, but
I love that. Okay, so to start, let's finish the topic here, or the conversation and topic on value, on what you see is happening right now. Now, podcasts live forever, folks. So we are time stamping November 2025, heading into 2026, or Q3 of 2025. The market doesn't dramatically change, in 2-3 year increments. But what have you seen in the trends, Marie? As you approach those values and those appraisals, have you seen anything change in the last 5-6 years? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I've seen some awesome changes, and I am speaking for the Rocky Mountain region. So I apologize if you're in other locations where maybe this feedback doesn't quite apply. But the most awesome change I'm seeing is the transition from insurance participation. I've never seen this like I've seen it in the last 5 years. I've never had so many clients transition off of PPO participation and go to a more fee-for-service model. I think a lot of that was due to the increase of supplies, as well as the increase of staffing in our region, as I think that's the same nationally. And it kind of forced people to have this hard look at what they were billing out to insurance providers. And when you really analyze that, it's likely that 20% of the procedures you're performing in the office, you're paying the patient to perform them. You're not making money off of it. It's like in the reverse, you're in the red. So it ends up not being as hard of a decision. You'd say, all right, I'd rather risk some attrition than continue to, not be making money or losing money. And so there are quite a few people that are starting to assist with that type of a process. But where this is having such a huge impact is in practice value. Because where I had these offices previously that maybe their net was like 200,000, 300,000, I could not be more excited for independent practitioners right now. Our younger buyers, if you're listening, I'm excited for you. Like, I'm excited for you to be in the marketplace now, where you could potentially acquire a practice where you're going to be paid and compensated for all of what you've put into getting your dental degree, all of the experience you've put in, all of this stress that you've gone through to be this fantastic clinician. There's opportunities now where your net income could be 6, 7, 8, 900,000.
Yeah,
like that. It's interesting to me. That's becoming more a normal thing that I used to not. I mean, I didn't see that 10 years ago. I would not have said that having a net income above 400,000 was common. Yeah. And now it's becoming pretty common. I'm seeing it quite regularly with practices that have transitioned off of insurance in the last, 2 to 5 years.
I think it's an awesome thing. I love that you're seeing more offices fee for service than ever before. I love hearing that. I haven't seen it personally, but I love that you're saying it, because you have all the listings. I love that today there is a movement there and that doctors appreciate the conversation that we had in the beginning of this conversation. And that is, you don't have to go so big to make good money. 5 ops, 4 ops. We have a client in Colorado that did a scratch startup. He actually hit $1 million his first year. It was his second year. He hit 1.2 or 1.3. And he asked me before I go to the 4th day, because he stayed 3 days. I was so proud of him for staying 3 days, hitting 1.2. He asked, should we start looking at dropping insurance now because we're full before you add that 4th day? These are the kind of conversations that I love having, because yes, you don't have to be on that. I don't know what that have the pull of being successful there. Marie, let's debunk the theory right now. I know we both will agree. Is it risky to buy a fee-for-service office? And I already know the answer is no.
Yeah.
Why? Yeah, why? I agree.
I mean,
why?
Yeah, I think there was the perception that was risky maybe 10, 20 years ago. Those are my most desirable practices that I have.
I get the question still though. Like, oh, I heard that.
That is interesting, but I think the worry is if a new person comes in, that maybe people just go to whoever's in network with insurance, but we forget there's a lot of loyalty in dentistry. I really am sad when people think there's not loyalty, because when you're in a middle to high income area, I'll see anybody at the dermatologist, but there's only like one person I want in my mouth. So we feel differently about dentistry than we do a lot of other things. So we have to remind ourselves of that patients feel that way too, and that they have a lot of loyalty. And there's a lot to be said for a seller endorsing that next person coming in. Yeah. So, but you get one shot.
That's true.
The patient comes in, they will give you one try.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's true. For that reason, and your team will give you a short window too. Treat your team right, treat your patients really good within the 6 months. And I always say, just chill out on the operations stuff. It's important unless it's like a risk to your license or a foundational issue. Just win over patients, win over team, and you're smooth sailing.
Exactly.
The attrition conversation is interesting. I don't know why people still bring this up to me. Like, I heard that you could lose 20% is average. That's not true. I don't see 20% attrition.
But the funny thing to me about this conversation is there's not a single practice management software program that tracks attrition. So who made up all these numbers?
I know.
Where did they even come from?
I know.
So if you want to say volume transition, because that's you could gauge that. The collections are different. The production's different. Fewer number of active patients, fewer number of new patients, but attrition itself, there's no way to quantify that unless you sat down and tracked every single person that called for records to be transferred. But that isn't even true attrition, because some people don't even call you. They just go somewhere else.
That's right. They don't have to your records. That's right.
Yeah. I had very few, it's been a long time since I've had this conversation with a buyer where they said that they were worried that patients were leaving.
It's only on the fee for service stuff that I get that question.
But I'm just sharing with the audience that in 20 years of being involved in transitions, I think I've had one person that said, hey, I'm a little bit stressed. Some patients have left. So that's a lot of transitions that are fee for service, PPO, Medicaid, everything. And to have that not be a common problem.
I think it's in their head. It's not necessarily what the experience is. And I agree with you that the collections may be where people's heads at, but collections is attached to a lot of things. Your ability to produce or not produce, your ability to be nice to your team members or whatever. So that could translate in so many ways other than, oh, I shouldn't have bought a Medicaid, a PPO, or a fee for service. I don't see the correlation. So that's really interesting and exciting. I agree with you that fee for service is more prevalent than ever. I think that's great. And yes, that's how it used to be as far as profit goes. Profit was so amazing for dentists when they weren't so attached to the insurance companies. So that's awesome to hear. Any other trends that you could think of that you would share before we shut the program down today?
Probably I'll give the sad trend on the other side, which is the increase of debt of our buyers just keeps going up and up. And I think my average buyer is $400,000 to $500,000 student debt. If they're a specialist, it's usually $700,000 to $800,000, $900,000. So I think that is definitely creating anxiety with our buyers, and I can empathize with why they're choosing to work for somebody for a window of time, maybe 3 to 7 years, to just feel some financial security before buying a practice. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think you're coming into practice ownership very experienced, very financially stable. So that trend, I would say, has changed the dynamic of buyers. So I no longer have any buyers right out of school. Most people are pretty experienced, and I think that's a positive trend from the standpoint of having a very successful transition where I'm no longer stressed about a buyer's speed or, competency. Those concerns have all gone away with in transitions because everyone is very experienced by the time they're acquiring a practice.
I love that. Are you seeing that the values, since we're on a valuation topic, do you see that the values have held about the same over the last 20 years, decade, pre-post COVID?
No, I would say most areas have two markets with practice values. So there is practices that cash flow over $250,000 after debt service or higher, and then practices that cash flow under $250,000 or lower. Those are two different markets. The ones that are lower, like if your cash flow after debt service is $150,000, I may struggle to even find one buyer for you to look at the practice, let alone sell it. If your net income after debt service is $800,000, you're going to have multiple offers within a couple of weeks. So those ones are going to sell at a higher premium. The ones that are kind of in that average range, 180 to 220 something, those are kind of average, but they sell at kind of an average range. Yeah. An average range of profit, let's be clear, not of percentage of gross collections. So if you want the basic rule of thumb, most practices sell for 150 to 200% of profit or net income. Just get that total percentage of gross collections out of the equation.
I love that. You said 150 to 200%. I like the way you said that. I've never heard it that way of all these years. I love that. 150% or 200% range.
Somewhere in that range of what the profit is, the net.
Yeah.
Is where the practice values typically 90% of the time they fall within that range.
Yeah. In your markets.
Yeah, that's a good point. In my market.
But I will say it's not too far off. In some of the really, really, some markets that are a lot more aggressive, you could see 250%, but I will, where that range is right there. And I love that it was all based on income. So I don't know, folks, I hope this debunked, or I hope this was a really good conversation as you approach brokers or even sellers directly. I always love when brokers are on deals because the deal is so much more organized. It's easier in so many ways, which is why I appreciate my partners like Marie out there doing the work that they do. But value is such an important thing, but don't forget the fit matters most, right? The practice has to fit you and vice versa. And so that's what me and Marie try to do on a daily basis. If you are a seller, reach out to Marie. She can help you get that game plan together within 5-7 years. If you need help growing over that 250 mark that she had the higher market for, well, reach out to Next Level. We'd love to help you do that. Anything else, Marie, that you'd love to share with the audience before we shut this thing down?
No, I just want to say thank you so much. You've worked with a number of our clients and certainly appreciate your expertise within our market as well.
Yeah, no, it's always awesome working with you guys. So thanks for being a guest and giving us your time and sharing your big brain, and tell your dad I said hi and all the things. So
thank you.
You're welcome. All right, guys, we'll shut the program down. Another episode of Dental Unscripted. As always, like, subscribe, do all the things. We love doing this, and we're going to continue to do it. So thanks again, and have a great day. See you, everybody.
Thanks for listening. Let us know how you like the show. Rate us on Apple and Spotify. Subscribe and follow for more.